The California afternoon sunlight sparkled as it reflected off the chandeliers in the Grand Pacific Hotel. And as I stood in front of the dressing room mirror, applying my lipstick one final time, a flutter of excitement warmed my heart. Today was my sister Jessica's wedding day, the day she would finally marry her soulmate. And I was filled with pure joy, wanting to celebrate her from the bottom of my heart. Maggie, are you ready? My husband, Robert, called out as he knocked gently on the door, his voice carrying its usual calm warmth mixed with the nervous tension that special occasions often bring. Just 2 more minutes, I replied while giving myself a last check in the mirror. The navy blue dress Jessica had chosen for me, telling me this color suits you best, was simple yet elegant. When Robert entered, his physique, honed from years as a firefighter, looked even more striking in his tailored suit. And though we had been married 12 years, my heart still skipped every time I saw him. "You look absolutely beautiful," he murmured, setting his hands on my shoulders. "Jessica must look stunning today, too." I nodded, recalling the breathtaking glimpse I'd caught of her wedding dress at yesterday's rehearsal. Robert's gentle brown eyes held that familiar, unwavering love. We didn't have children, but our days together were content and fulfilling. "Do you think David is a good man?" I asked, feeling a flicker of concern. "Yes," he said confidently. "I talked with him last night at dinner. He's honest, intelligent, and passionate about running his restaurant. And most importantly, he looks at Jessica with gentleness." His words reassured me deeply. Jessica had struggled through relationships in her younger years, and I had always worried about her. But this time, she seemed more grounded than ever. "When you're ready, could you head to the chapel first?" I said. "I want to check on Jessica one more time." Robert chuckled lightly. "Sure, just don't cry too much, you'll ruin your makeup." It was true. I was the type to cry at movies, books, anything even remotely touching. I was certain the wedding vows would turn me into a mess. As I walked down the hallway toward the bridal suite, memories of childhood drifted through my mind. I had been the introverted child who loved reading, while Jessica was lively and social, always surrounded by friends and attention. Dad often praised her charm, saying, "Jess has a special glow that draws people in." Meanwhile, I was the serious and hard-working daughter who apparently needed more initiative. But after Dad passed away 5 years ago, Jessica and I grew closer than we had ever been, and the competitiveness of childhood faded as we faced adulthood separately. We had spent Dad's final days together, strengthening the bond between us. When I knocked on the bridal suite door, Mom's gentle voice called, "Margaret, come in, dear." Inside, the sight of Jessica in her wedding dress stunned me. The classic design of lace accents and silk satin highlighted her natural beauty magnificently.
"Jess, you look absolutely gorgeous," I whispered, my voice trembling. Jessica turned, her smile radiant, glowing with the joy of a woman truly in love. "Thank you, Maggie. You look wonderful too," she said. Mom was fussing with the final adjustments on Jessica's gown. "You both look so beautiful," she murmured, her eyes glistening. "Your father must be watching over us from heaven." We held hands, sharing a quiet, emotional moment before heading to the chapel. The Grand Pacific Hotel chapel looked like a breathtaking movie set, with white roses and calla lilies adorning the altar and crystal chandeliers reflecting rainbow colors across the solemn venue. Over 100 guests were seated, waiting for the ceremony to begin. I sat beside Robert, scanning the crowd while holding the program. Relatives from both Dad's and Mom's sides, along with many friends of the bride and groom, had gathered. Mom was seated in the front row, dabbing her eyes, undoubtedly feeling Dad's absence deeply. "Those are Jessica's college friends," Robert whispered, pointing toward a group of beautifully dressed women chatting affectionately. Jessica had always been popular and maintained close friendships even after graduation, something I had always admired. When the organ began to play, silence spread across the chapel. David took his place at the altar beside the minister. He looked nervous, yet unmistakably filled with deep love and determination. I could see why Jessica had chosen him. He possessed a quiet charm and the confidence of a successful restaurant owner. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle first, and then Jessica appeared, supported by Mom's arm. A gasp escaped me, although she had looked stunning earlier. The sacred atmosphere made her beauty even more breathtaking. Her dress train flowed elegantly across the floor as her veil fluttered gently with each step. Mom walked with pride and bittersweet emotion as she escorted her youngest daughter. Jessica smiled warmly at each guest, and when her eyes met mine, she gave me an especially heartfelt smile that nearly brought me to tears. When she reached David, Mom placed Jessica's hand into his, and the loving gaze they exchanged made the entire venue hold its breath. The minister began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered today to celebrate the marriage of David Harrison and Jessica Winston. As the minister's solemn words echoed through the chapel, memories of Jessica's childhood flooded my mind. Her playing dress-up in a toy wedding dress, hosting pretend wedding ceremonies for her dolls, dreaming of a day just like this. And now her long-held dream was finally becoming reality before my eyes. David Harrison, do you take Jessica Winston to be your wife, to love, honor, comfort, and keep her in sickness and in health, in prosperity and adversity, and forsaking all others, be faithful to her as long as you both shall live? The minister asked. And David answered, I do, with a strong, unwavering voice, his eyes shimmering with emotion. Then Jessica responded just as clearly when asked the same, her voice ringing beautifully as she declared, I do, her face glowing with a mixture of deep love and hopeful anticipation for her new life. The ring exchange followed. David placed a ring onto Jessica's finger with trembling hands as he said, Jessica, receive this ring as a sign of my love and commitment, and as a symbol that I have chosen you above all others. I will love you until God parts us.
Jessica then placed the ring on David's finger, repeating the same vow, her expression filled with tenderness. Sitting beside Robert, I squeezed his hand and he gently squeezed back, clearly moved as well. I felt a surge of nostalgia, remembering our own spring wedding 12 years ago in a small church, equally filled with love and hopeful promises. After the minister finally said, "You may kiss the bride," the entire chapel erupted with applause as they kissed for the first time as husband and wife. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but they were tears of joy. Jessica had truly found happiness. As the newlyweds made their exit, guests stood to applaud them. When Jessica passed by, she gave me a special wave, her smile radiant with bliss. After the ceremony, guests moved to the hotel lobby for cocktail hour, where the setting was decorated with elegant flower arrangements, champagne, and hors d'oeuvres. "It really was a beautiful ceremony," Robert said, holding his champagne. "Yes, perfect," I replied, watching the newlyweds pose for photos in the sunset-lit garden. Jessica looked angelic, her dress glowing in the warm light. "Did you speak with David's mother?" I asked. "Yes," Robert replied. "She's very refined, and she said she already thinks of Jessica as a daughter. That brought me comfort. Marriage was not just the union of two people, but also of two families, and when families accepted each other with love, the couple's life became richer." Mom soon joined us, her eyes still moist. "Margaret, Robert, thank you for today. Your father must be pleased too," she whispered. "It really was beautiful," I said, taking her hand. Jess looked so happy. "That's what matters most," Robert added kindly. "David is a wonderful man. They'll build a good home together." As cocktail hour ended, guests were directed into the grand ballroom, decorated even more lavishly than the chapel, with round tables adorned with roses and soft candlelight. Mom, Robert, and I sat with David's family at the same table. Excitement buzzed in the room as elegant music played, and the newlyweds entered to a standing ovation. Jessica had changed into her reception dress, still elegant but easier to move in, and David beamed as he held her hand. David began his speech sincerely. Meeting Jessica has been the greatest fortune of my life. I was captivated by her kindness, intelligence, and beauty, and every day brought new discoveries. Today, we begin our new life as husband and wife, and with your warm support, we promise to build a home filled with love. Applause filled the hall as Jessica took the microphone next. Everyone, thank you so much for celebrating this special day with us. I especially want to thank my mother and my sister Margaret for all their help preparing today. It's sad that my father isn't here, but I believe he's watching us from heaven. My tears rose as Dad was mentioned yet again. Robert gently placed his shoulder on mine. Then Jessica turned to her husband. David, meeting you changed my life. With your love supporting me, I became my true self. I am truly happy to walk through life with you from now on. After their speeches, waiters poured champagne as the MC instructed. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses. We stood and lifted ours toward the newlyweds. To David and Jessica's everlasting happiness. Cheers! A joyous chorus of cheers filled the ballroom as glasses clinked. I sipped my champagne, silently praying for my sister's happiness, feeling the profound meaning of this day. Soon after, dinner service began. I looked at the menu: smoked salmon canapés, vegetable terrines, bisque, fish, beef Wellington, dessert, a luxurious feast. It really was a wonderful menu, I told Mom. Yes, she said. Jessica and David tasted many dishes before choosing these. The beef Wellington is David's favorite. The appetizers arrived beautifully plated and aromatic. Conversation flowed warmly. David's family was charming and easy to talk with. Then came the soup, creamy corn and lobster bisque, and Robert remarked with satisfaction, "This is delicious." "The fish course is next," I said, and then it happened. Robert, who had been watching the waiters bring out the fish course from the kitchen, suddenly froze, his face drained of color. His eyes sharpened with the alertness of a firefighter sensing danger. "What's wrong?" I whispered, but he did not answer, still staring toward the kitchen, gripping the table edge as tension filled his body. A waiter approached our table carrying a beautifully plated dish of sautéed white fish drizzled with lemon butter sauce. And while other guests murmured happily at the sight of the elegant meal, Robert's reaction was completely different. He stared at my plate with an intensity that made my heart thud uneasily. Just as I reached for my fork, he suddenly leaned close to my ear and whispered urgently, "We're leaving right now." His voice, low and commanding, sounded exactly like the tone he used at emergency scenes when lives were at line. "Right now? What's wrong?" I asked in bewilderment as he rose from his chair, gripping my arm firmly yet gently, his expression leaving no space for argument. I looked around the ballroom. Guests were laughing, eating, talking. Everything was normal. And yet my husband acted as though something catastrophic was unfolding. "I'll explain in the car," was all he said, refusing to elaborate while guiding me out of the venue as inconspicuously as possible. Mom, seated nearby, was deep in conversation and didn't notice our abrupt departure. Neither did Jessica and David, who were joyfully chatting with guests. As Robert led me through the hotel lobby, down the elevator, and into the parking garage, he remained silent, his posture tense, his focus razor sharp. Fear began to creep into my chest. Once inside the car, he started the engine, exhaled deeply, then turned to me with disbelief etched into his face.
"Did you really not notice?" he asked, his voice laden with shock and something like sorrow. "Notice what?" I whispered anxiously. Instead of answering, he began driving away from the hotel, and only when we pulled into a quiet residential area and parked beneath a streetlight did he finally speak. "Maggie, do you remember your peanut allergy?" That question alone made chills crawl down my spine. Of course I do, but what does that have to do with tonight? I told the hotel in advance, and Jessica said she'd be careful too. Robert swallowed hard. That wasn't the case. Confusion tightened my chest. What? What do you mean? He ran a hand through his hair before saying, "Before the kitchen staff brought out the plates, I noticed Jessica speaking with the chef. At first, I thought it was just normal wedding preparations, but then I saw her pointing at a specific plate. My heart began racing uncontrollably. A specific plate? Your plate, Maggie," he said, voice trembling slightly. "She confirmed your seat number. Then I saw the chef take out a small bottle. I recognized it instantly. The shape, the label, color, it was peanut oil. I felt like the world tilted. No, that's impossible," I stammered. "Jess would never do something like that. There must be some mistake. Maybe it was a special seasoning." "Maggie," he interrupted, softly but firmly, taking my hand. "I've seen food allergy emergencies in my job. I've seen people nearly die. I know what peanut oil bottles look like. There's no way I'm mistaken." Terror hollowed my stomach. I remembered the time I had been rushed to the hospital years ago after unknowingly consuming food cooked with peanut oil. The hives, the struggle to breathe, the dizziness, the doctor warning that even a few minutes' delay could have been fatal. "But why?" I whispered, my voice cracking. Why would she ever want to hurt me?" Robert's expression darkened with sadness as he reached into the dashboard and pulled out a set of papers. "Do you remember when Jessica and I talked about your father's will last month?" "Yes," I said faintly. "I thought it was just routine legal updates." At that time, she asked me something strange. She asked, "What would happen to the inheritance if something happened to Maggie?" My breath caught. "That means your father's will leaves 70% of his assets to you and 30% to Jessica. But there's also a clause saying that if you die first, everything, all of it, goes to the surviving heir." I felt tears sting my eyes as everything inside me began to crumble. "But why did Dad leave me more?" I asked in a trembling voice.
"Because," Robert said softly, "you cared for him for 10 years. You accompanied him to appointments, supported his daily needs, and during his last 2 years, you reorganized your work schedule to be with him. Jessica never came." I felt my throat tighten. That was true. Jessica always had reasons. Too busy, work trips, obligations, and I never resented her for it because I loved her. "There's more," Robert added grimly. "At dinner yesterday, David mentioned something that didn't sit right with me. He said Jessica had talked about wanting to expand into a restaurant chain using your inheritance. He didn't seem to understand what that implied, but now everything fits." A cold chill wrapped around my entire body as the horrifying truth took shape. My sister had already planned her future funded by my death. Tonight presented the perfect cover, Robert whispered bitterly. A joyful wedding, a festive dinner, an allergic reaction that would look like a tragic accident. No one would question it. The silence in the car grew suffocating. I stared at my trembling hands, realizing that the sister I loved, defended, admired, had tried to kill me. "Robert," I finally whispered, my voice barely holding together, "if you hadn't been there, I would have—" But he squeezed my hand firmly, cutting me off with a quiet, unwavering vow. "I won't let anything happen to you. Protecting you is my mission." His words steadied me, but the reality was still too immense to grasp. "What should we do now?" I asked, shaken. Robert took out his phone.
First, I'll make an anonymous report to the hotel. I'll tell them someone may have intentionally added allergens to a dish meant for a guest with a severe peanut allergy. That alone will trigger an internal investigation. Then we gather evidence, document everything from tonight, and take legal action if necessary. I nodded slowly, even though my heart was still unraveling. It was a painful decision, but I had no choice. I had to protect myself. Robert looked at me then with eyes filled with compassion. Maggie, you have real family, people who love and protect you. Blood alone doesn't make someone family. For the first time that night, I felt a small, fragile smile emerge. He was right. Robert was my true family, and the friends who genuinely cared for me, not the sister who had tried to end my life. As Robert started the car again and we drove into the quiet night, city lights blurred past my window while I tried to process the truth. My feelings for Jessica wouldn't vanish instantly, but now that I knew what she'd planned, I had to move forward. "Let's spend tonight quietly at home," Robert said softly. "Tomorrow we'll sort everything out." I nodded, exhausted. 3 weeks passed afterward, filled with events that changed everything. Due to Robert's anonymous report, the hotel launched an investigation, and within hours they discovered irregularities in the kitchen. The wedding reception was abruptly interrupted under the pretext of suspected food poisoning, though the true finding was far more sinister. Traces of peanut oil were detected on my plate. Jessica's entire plan was exposed. The hotel's security cameras had captured her giving secretive instructions to the chef. Worse, investigators uncovered messages on her phone detailing the plan to use my inheritance to expand David's restaurant business. When David learned the truth, he visited our home, pale and shaken. He said he didn't know. If he had known, he would have stopped it, I swear. His remorse seemed genuine, and I chose to believe him. He too had been deceived. He told us he was filing for divorce. I can't start a marriage like this. The fact that Jessica tried to harm you, I can't look past that. Pain was clear in his eyes. He had believed he married a kind woman, not someone capable of attempted murder.
As for Jessica, I still hadn't spoken directly to her. All communication came through lawyers. She tried reaching out, but I couldn't bring myself to hear her voice. The shattering of decades of sisterhood in one night wasn't something a person could process quickly. When Mom learned the truth, she was devastated, so stunned she barely ate for 2 days. Through tears, she finally told me, "Margaret, I doted on Jessica too much. I relied on you entirely when your father fell ill. I never asked Jessica to help, and I failed to see your burden." That led to this. I held her tightly. "It's not your fault, Mom. This was Jessica's choice. All we can do now is move forward and cherish each other." Jessica was eventually charged with attempted murder. Her lawyer argued temporary insanity, but the evidence of premeditation, messages, camera footage, instructions to the chef was overwhelming. Meanwhile, my life gradually returned to its rhythm. My work as a real estate agent resumed smoothly, and Robert supported me every step of the way. The greatest shift, however, was inside me. I began appreciating the people around me with deeper gratitude than ever before. My longtime friend, Sarah, visited after hearing about the incident. "Blood doesn't matter," she told me gently. "The people who truly love you are your real family." And she was right. Robert, Sarah, my friends, colleagues, neighbors, the people who truly cared were the ones who deserved space in my heart. One morning in the kitchen, as Robert and I prepared breakfast, I looked at him and said, "If you hadn't been there that night, I wouldn't be here now." He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "I'm just grateful I could protect you." A new day was beginning outside the window, sunlight filtering into our warm home. Though the experience had been painful, it clarified what mattered most: real connections over blood ties, genuine love over selfishness. My life would continue, this time surrounded by people who truly loved me. And maybe someday, when enough time had passed, I might find it in my heart to forgive Jessica. But for now, I would cherish myself and the people who protected me. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If this story touched you, please give it a like. Your support means a lot to me. Subscribe to channel so you don't miss new stories.